and we hitchhiked on this Russian horse and buggy. We were sitting in the back of the wagon, and we passed the river Tisa, which the Germans dynamited a bridge. And they put up a temporary military bridge. And the soldier that was standing guard on the bridge, when we went to the bridge, he was standing with his face to us, so he didn't see us in the back. As we went this way, and he was facing the other way. And we came the other end of the bridge. The soldier was standing facing us. And he says, "Hold, where are you going?" So I said, "We are Jews." He says, "You have no right. I don't know civilians allowed to pass this bridge." And I speak a little Russian. When he sees me speaking Russian, it's very unusual. This was by the river. He hollers to the lieutenant was shaving by the river water. He hollers, "Lieutenant, I got a spy here. 2 spies here." And I understand him. He comes over and he tells us both right to pick our hands up. And the lieutenant comes in. First, incidentally, I forgot to tell you, the first Russian soldier that came in took my watch away that my father gave me. He took my watch away. This was their habit. Right away, when they captured, when they saw civilians with watches, the watches said that Zeigel, all took it away. Took my father's watch away. Today, I would be so happy if I had that watch. Anyway, they start searching, take away from our pockets everything out. And I hear the lieutenant said, "Give him back everything." And they find by him the map. And they find the handwritten map. Now they know that we are spies. Now they're taking us into a room, into a house. And they sit us into a corner, and a Russian soldier with those Katyusha big rifles standing like this over us. And everybody's coming in. "Let me see this Russian. Let me see the spies. This spion you. And the guy doesn't understand what they're saying, and I don't want to tell him. So he says, "What's happening?" I says, "I think they're going to send us with an escort home because they want to protect us." And he doesn't know, but I know already what's happening. Then they take us into a court-martial, into another room. 1 woman and 3 men officers with big, all kinds of decorations, and they start speaking with a German interpreter. So I should tell them where the bomb was to dynamite the bridge. Now I got very sad. I started crying. I said, "I'm Jewish, and I didn't know what happened to my parents." And I said, "My father and mother and all my family got killed." I'm trying to save my life by throwing, I didn't know whether they're killed yet, but that's the instinct in you. "And what are you trying to speak to me German? I speak Yiddish, and that's why I understand German. I speak Russian because I'm from Carpathen. And I start unzipping my pants to show them that I'm circumcised, because during the Germans, when they caught somebody, they immediately opened you up to see if you're circumcised, because over in Europe, no Christian was ever circumcised. The Russians didn't know about that, but because under communists, the Jews even didn't circumcise. It was forbidden. So when I started to go, they thought that I was trying to pee on them, and they started to cover their faces. Don't. I said, "Look at me, I'm Jewish." They don't know what I'm showing, because they don't know that. So I put it back, and I started to cry. So they said, "All right, we will close. If you don't want to tell us that you're spies, we will send you back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we'll execute you. But we have to get the permission from the political division of the political department of the army." Okay. I'm still telling him tomorrow morning they're going to send me. He doesn't understand a word, because he doesn't understand no German, no Russian. So. And in the meantime, during the night, I hear the Russians coming in. I had boots, he had boots, I had a leather jacket. They're dividing who's going to take what from us. And I wasn't really, because I was ready to die anyway. It was just a miracle. It just hurt me that I survived and got killed by the Russians. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, they gave us tea. I was afraid we didn't eat nothing. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, in walks a little officer, an officer like this. "Yes, we are well, the spies." And he comes in, and I say, "I'm not a spy, I'm a Jew, I'm a Yid." He said, "Bist du Yid? So, bist du Yid? Ich euch Yid." when he says that, I say, because in Europe we used to say, so that was my first thing that came to my mind. I started saying, he didn't know what I'm saying. So I said, bist du Jid, red Jid? Ich sage, sicher bin ich ein Jid. Man hat einen Taten, Mama, mein ganzes Mischbuch ausgehargert. Und ich habe gesagt, dus is, en dan toch kiss mich. En dan mich kischen, en dan den kischen. He started to kiss us both. And so so let him kiss, the guy doesn't know what he's doing. And he starts to cry. And he's a colonel. He's a colonel from the NKVD. He's bigger than a general. Later on, he introduced me to Marshal Malenkov, and I was singing for him. Eli Eli made me sing. I have a very good singing voice. For Marshal Malenkov, he was the marshal in Hungary. I sang. So he says to the soldier that was watching us, Atanashi, he's one of us, leave him alone. He says, I have my orders, 8 o'clock, for my order. I have to get my orders from my officer. Not from you, you're not my officer. And he went for his pistol because he was so excited that he found a Jew. This guy had hand grenades in front of the soldier. When he went for his pistol, the soldier went for his hand grenade. So I didn't want to give me either. So I had in another corner from both of them away. So this guy wasn't dummy. He knows that he has to get. So he knocked on the window for his chauffeur. Go bring his officer. He brought him in his underwear. He was still sleeping. He says, take this son of a gun away out of here. He took him away. He took me in his Jeep, Biddegoy, and then I told him. He saved me. He says, good. And he took us into his headquarters, and I lived with him for about 4 weeks.
What was his name?
This guy's name, I only called him Michael. His last name was Borishenko. But we know Colonel Borishenko. And he was telling me that he's from Odessa. His whole family was killed. And he's coming with the army from Stalingrad. I'm the first Jewish survivor he ran into. And I was young, and I was reason he wanted to adopt me. I should become his son. We'll go back to Moscow. He'll put me in the conservatory to learn how to sing. And this noch singen for Stalin. He'll sing for Stalin. And his underlings, he was a very powerful man. The marshals were afraid of him, generals, because he was from the political division. And he used to, the Ukrainians, the anti-Semites, he used to give him so much trouble. He made one polish my boots. And I would tell him, Michael, stop that. I was in charge of distributing the money to the soldiers. And he was just very rude with his underlings. In the meantime, he took the largest department store in Miskolc and made my goy the manager of that store. And I stayed with him, and the guy moved out, and I stayed with him. The guy was having a good time. He had all his girls. He was, and I stayed with him. He gave me papers that I am his official bearer. He gave me a Russian fur hat, and I never forget one day one of his underlings was half drunk. And he told me, told me a joke. Want to hear a joke? He says, God came to Stalin. He says, why do you want war? He says, I don't want war. Roosevelt wanted the war. God says, why do you want war? I don't want war. Hitler wants war. Go to Hitler, why do you want war? He says, I don't want war. The Jews want war. Go to the Jews, why do you want war? He says, we want war. Go to the front line and see if you find one Jew. This was his way of saying that the Jews aren't fighting. And I'm listening to that. If I would told the colonel that he told me this joke, he would have killed him. So help me, he would have shot him. But one day, one of these assistants caught him off guard near the front, and he threw a handgun at him and killed him.
While you were still with him?
They took his body back to Russia.
When did this happen?
This happened somewhere in February.
And you were still with him at that time?
I was still with him. The minute I heard it, I picked myself up because I knew these guys are going to come after me. I don't know what they would do with me, but I didn't want to stay there anymore, and I ran to Großwaldheim. First I went to Gust.
You went back to Gust?
I went back to Gust, and in Satmar I met my brother-in-law that also was he was in a labor camp by the Hungarians, and he survived. And I met him in Satmar in shul by accident.
This was Adler.
Adler, Daniel Adler, and we went together to Gust. We took out the money my father left and the jewelry, whatever was there, and we settled, and we started to live in Tej, a little town near Gust, and we went from there to Bucharest. In Bucharest, the joint gave every refugee 30,000 lei for clothing in there, so we picked that up, and we started dealing with matches. We would buy matches in Bucharest and bring them to Gust because there was a big scarcity in other wares that weren't available, and we would travel back and forth. And I lived with my brother-in-law there then. Then for Pesach, I went to a cousin that survived he remained in Brașov. In Romania, they didn't deport him. And then I settled down in Grozvodine because the Vizhnitz Rebbe was there. And I stayed there for a few months, and I stopped doing business. My brother-in-law was doing the business by himself.
This was when?
This
was the war over? At this
right
point?
after Pesach.
Was the war over?
The war wasn't over yet.
But it was over where you were.
It was over when we were. And that's how we lived. I remember that by the Vizhnitz Rebbe in Grozvodine, one Shabbos, we didn't have minyan, so we brought in 2 Russian soldiers, Jewish soldiers, to make a minyan. And I also remember then, asked the Rebbe, how could God do this? He says, and he said, at one time, he says, we didn't know yet what happened with the families. God took from us our mashkin, and he's our father. If he doesn't give us our mashkin back, what kind of a father will he be? Then when we started finding out what's happening, he said, well, only to small people does death seem a punishment. Death al Kiddush Hashem is greater than living. This is what the old Vizhnitz Rebbe told me then. And if you want to accept that, fine. And we lived there until we found our I was at a railroad station in Grozvodine, and somebody said to me, you know, I saw your sister not far away. And I go over there, is my sister Rivka in the Auschwitz uniform, that without any hair. And that's where we found her. And then we found out from somebody else that my other sister, Blima, also survived. And I don't remember exactly where we found her, but then we settled down in Sighet. We moved into Sighet, and we lived in a house there. In fact, we lived in the Sighet Aruf's house together with the present Satmar Aruf. Also was there, his sister was there, and we lived there for a while, and my brother-in-law was dealing with sending salt from, because there was a salt mine near Sighet, in Szalatvana, to Budapest. There was a scarcity. And when we were in Sighet, our third sister showed up. This was already after the war. Then sometime in June, the war was over, and all of them came out. They were all liberated. And we all lived in Sighet for a while. And my brother-in-law was shipping the salt there. It was illegal. They were putting salt inside the train wagons and outside with wood, with lumber, assigning lumber to Budapest to rebuild the communist country. They came to a station in Kirahas, and they coupled the wagon with another one. They hit it very hard, and the salt started to pour out from the bottom, and they discovered it. So they confiscated it. They were doing this with a Russian Jewish officer together, sending the salt. So we decided we have to run away. So we ran away from Sighet, all of us.
Who was all of us at this time?
My brother-in-law,
Adler.
my 3 sisters, my other sister's daughter, Leitch's daughter, Rivchu, who was living here, and my sister Sura's daughter, Gitala, who was living in Far Rockaway. All of us went to Czechoslovakia because we heard that in the Sudetengebiet they give for refugees houses. We came to Sudeten, and they gave us 2 houses, one for my brother-in-law and his sister, and one for us. And we had they gave us house fully furnished with linen and everything, beautiful palaces. And we lived there for a while. And my brother had some money from what we did business with. And from there, we lived there for a few months. And we started making preparations to go to America because we knew that we had an uncle in America.
Before you go into more into America, I just want to go a little bit back. When you left your father the first time, was there anything he had said to you about after the war? Anything he had said to you about what was to come? Did he have a sense of the danger that was going on?
No, as a matter of fact, he had a sense. That's why he gave me the watch and told me where the money is hidden, and told me it hid me out of the ghetto because he knew something's going to happen to them. As a matter of fact, my two sisters who traveled with him on the train tell me here that he told them in the train, if they ask you if you can work, don't tell them you tell them you're able and strong to work. I'm afraid people who can't work won't be able to survive. And the Rabbitson, who was on the same railroad car with them, was always a sickly woman. And my father admonished her, Rabbitson, get dressed and stay up, and when you come, tell them you can work. But she didn't. She went to, the husband survived, but she went into the crematorium because she told him she was sick when she came. But he really never gave me like a tzavua, because although he had a sense, but he wasn't sure, plus he didn't want to make me feel that way. And when I left, I told him, I'm not leaving for good, I'll be back, so very soon we'll be together again. We didn't want to accept the fact that this is the end.
When you came back to Khust after the war, how many Jews came back?
When we came back to the Jews after the war, there was one family there with two daughters who were also hidden by a goy near Khust. They were cooking for us. We were there a few days, and there may have been 6 or 7 people who also, like my brother-in-law, were saved from labor camps. Nobody had come back yet from anywhere. When I left Khust, there was maybe, the last time I was in Khust, maybe there was 4 or 5 people there.
And how many Jews had lived in Khust before the war?
1,000, maybe more. Khust we had something like 18 synagogues.
And now there were 7 of you now going
Now
to try
we
to get to America.
Now we were 7 living in Liberec. And my brother-in-law found out that there is a rabbi, in fact he's in the east side now, I can't think of his name right now, who was arranging for people to go to Belgium and from Belgium to America on false papers. So we decided, and this guy Mendele Tenenbaum, who was a nephew of the Satmar Roof, was the manager of these buses. We paid for going, just 4 of us, my 2 nieces, and my older sister and myself. We'll go first with the bus, and my rest of the family will follow later. So we went onto this bus, and we came to the Belgian border, and we had papers that we were Hollanders from the Netherlands, traveling through Belgium, repatriated through Belgium to Holland.
How did you get those papers?
This Mendele Tenenbaum gave us everybody those papers.
How did he get them?
That we didn't try. They had ways. As a matter of fact, I have a paper during the time I was in Liberec. I have a paper from the Snif Mizrahi from Czechoslovakia that I was assigned to stand on the border to help smuggle Polish Jews who would come daily, 40 or 50 from Poland. Czechoslovakia at that time, although we were not communist, we were still under Jan Masaryk, who was still democratic. So he let the Jews from Poland come in, and we would smuggle them from the border every night, 100, 200, about 5 kilometers from Asch, the border of Czechoslovakia, into Germany, into the American zone. And I was stationed there. I was there for about 5 or 6 weeks.
Where was this?
In Asch, in Czechoslovakia.
You were just living there with your family?
We had what we call members of the Bricha from Israel, two guys who were helping us transport Polish Jews into Germany to camps.
This was something like a Jewish underground?
Yes, like a Jewish underground. And at night, 200, 300 people would go through that forest from the Asch border to the German. The American soldiers let them in. It was prearranged. And the Czech guards were told not to watch, so we smuggled them. But we didn't want to go to Germany because we wanted to, our ultimate goal was to go to my uncle. Incidentally, when you asked me, my father did tell me when I left, don't forget, if you survive, don't forget Uncle Fetter Yossel in America. So we remembered that, we knew that. So we went on that, when they stopped us at the Belgian border, somebody tipped them off already or something. And they asked one of, I remember his name was Dachner, Mr. Dachner, are you a Hollander? And they showed him the picture of the Crown Prince, the Queen's son-in-law, Bernard, that was his name. And he says, yeah, that looks like Mengele. He was in a uniform. He says, do you know who that is? He says, yeah. So he started to ask people they know, they didn't know nothing. So they took us back with the bus into Germany in a town called Trier, in the French zone. This was on the French zone. And they kept us there and they gave us a barrack in the French military camp. We stood there for about 4 weeks, not knowing what's happening.
Was this like a DP camp? Was this a displaced person?
It wasn't like a DP camp, it was like a jail. We were kept in turn. We couldn't get in or out. We were supposed to be caught traveling illegally. In the meantime, they found out in Belgium what happened. They started working on it.
Who found out in Belgium?
The Jewish community. Belgium had a Jewish community already. And one day a bus showed up, and they put us all in a bus, and they took us into into Frankfurt, Salzheim, which was a DP camp, and they put us down there. Over there, they had these troops, these transports coming daily, and they distributed us into different camps, because Salzheim was a distributing camp, although there were a lot of people living there too, but it was full. And they sent us to Eschwege. This is a little village by Kassel. And there was a DP camp, and they gave us very nice living quarters, and we started living in camp, in the DP camp. A guy by the name of Shmilovich was a chuster in Frankfurt. He was the head of the Mizrahi in Salzheim. He came one day and says, Ben, I want you to be our candidate for Mizrahi. They had elections in the camp, to be a member of the committee in the camp. I said, okay. So I became Mizrahi in the election. I won the election. I became chief of police in Eschwege. We had about 3,000 people in that camp. As a matter of fact, at one time, Ben Gurion came visiting the camp because they had elections in Switzerland for the not for the Knesset, for the Congress, for delegates for the Jewish Congress. And the Jewish populations in the DP camps were entitled to vote. For Labour or Likud, or so we all voted. Of course, we voted for Mizrahi. But when they came campaigning.
Who was the candidate for Mizrahi?
I don't remember anymore. Moshe Shapiro was a candidate for Mizrahi. Yes, I do. In fact, I have a picture with him. Moshe Shapiro, he became the Secretary of Interior in the first government. And Rabbi Bar Ilan was the candidate for Mizrahi too, at that stage. They won. Anyway, Ben Gurion came campaigning. One time, President Eisenhower visited our camp, and I, as chief of police, received him. And I remember, I have a picture. I was only 20 years old, and I was too young to wear it, and I had a little mustache, but it was still white. I painted it black. I should look older. Because I had 100 policemen under me, and we were on 3 miles from the Russian zone. And we also I was in charge of a camp, of a children camp, that the Israeli Bricha collected in Poland Jewish children who were hidden away by non-Jews.
How many
And
children were in this?
about 250. They collected them from all over Poland, all over Eastern Europe, wherever they went, they brought them there. And they had nuns who were taking care of them. And the Russians would come at night and bother these girls. And there was no military guard, so they allowed for 4 of our policemen to have weapons. The military intelligence allowed us to have weapons, so we had a full complement of policemen.
Who was the head of the DP camp? Do you remember? Who was the commandant of the
Yeah.
camp?
You mean the president of the camp?
Yeah.
It was a fellow with the name, oh, he's here yet. I'll think of it later.
So you were saying that you were protecting the children who were being bothered by the Russians.
Huh?
You were telling us you were protecting the children.
Yeah, so the police, he had nothing to do with that. Volinsky was his name. And then one day, and we didn't know what's happening, an American soldier walks into the camp. He was looking for a family Zellinger, because nobody knew was the reason I had to switch to Tenenbaum. When we left Khost, when I left Khost, I took out my birth certificate. And the birth certificate said, it didn't even put in Zellinger, it just said Tenenbaum Baruch Hashem. I had to stick to that because that's my papers now. When he found out, we heard somebody looking for Zellinger, so I said, I am Zellinger. And this soldier comes in, he's an American lieutenant. He's from Wilmington, Delaware. And a member named Yossel Waldman asked him to look us up. And that was my uncle.
This is tape 3, the end of tape 3, the interview with Mr. Ben Tenenbaum. This is roll 4, Mr. Ben Tenenbaum, interviewed by Rivka Waxlack, May 18, 1995. You were telling us that an emissary from your uncle in America found you in this DP camp.
So this Lieutenant Berger found us, and he says, my uncle said to give us, he sent us $1,000. And that camp, $1,000, you could have bought the whole camp for it. And he told us not to worry, that the minute he finds us, he should let him know where we are, and he's going to start working for papers to get us into America. Of course, we were very happy, and this, we didn't know what to do with the money. And my uncle at that point was already a very rich man here. And I have to go back a little bit to the history of my uncle. My uncle lived in Khost, and my aunt, who was my father's sister, her father died when she was very young, so she grew up in my father's house. My father married her off and gave her nothing, like his own daughter, and they were considered like his daughter. Then my uncle went into one venture. He bought an orchard of apple, and the orchard didn't materialize. So
He was successful in America.
he lost it, so he couldn't do nothing right. So my father says, go learn to become a sheikhet and go to America. He went, learned the shachtas and Sigir, became a sheikhet. And during the war, there was scarcity of meats. He started shechting kosher meats and selling. Slowly and slowly, he made a slaughterhouse, and he started making a lot of money. So by the time we came, he was a very rich man with a big slaughterhouse. And when we came, he told us, whatever I have is thanks to your father. but I'm jumping a little ahead of time. So we were still in the camps, and every week, as soon as he found out where we are, he would send us an envelope, put in $100. And he would say, don't worry, if I lose one or two envelopes, as long as you get one, I'm all right. And he just keep us sending $100. We came to America with money because